The Jericho 941F police trade-in. Let's check it out. The Jericho 941 was developed in 1990 by the Israeli Military Industries, or IMI. It was the developer of the military arms for Israel. The CZ75 design was what inspired this handgun because it was just proven. And the Israeli military needed something that they could really rely on. These are actually from Israeli security forces and their police trade-ins. This is a nice nickel finish to it. It's in 9mm. It again is based on the CZ75, even takes CZ75 magazines. And so this is something that's just coming in from Classic Firearms, and the price is excellent. IMI changed to IWI and became privatized, and so we're seeing a lot of these even in new condition and in polymer frames as well that are available here in the United States. But today we're going to take a look at this old police trade-in and a surplus, and I love when we get these guns in. Just a lot of fun to take these out and learn a few things about them. That is smooth like butter. Now, first thing let's do is make sure that the gun is unloaded. We're going to drop our magazine, check to make sure the chamber is empty, and it is. They use the CZ type magazines. It's 15+1, but you can get any of your CZ75 magazines are compatible with this handgun, which makes it really nice. And some of the rounds on the CZ can run up to 18 rounds. So it gives you a lot of capacity. And I believe that a lot of these are made by Metgar as well, which Metgar is an excellent company for magazines. So, you know, magazines are important with the reliability, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this is a single action only CZ75. Now, the standard CZ75, which I have right here, this is a double single action. We're going to go ahead and make sure again that the gun is unloaded. And that means that when I pull the trigger, the hammer comes into the rear position. Subsequent shots, we're in single action, so I can just pull the trigger and fire the handgun. With the Jericho 941F, and the F is important, that was made for the security forces, is that you can't actuate the hammer with the trigger. Now, I did have it in half cock and it popped, but this is made this way, and that means that when I want to have a round in the chamber, I have to load it, just like this, and then I'm ready to go. I can keep it cocked and locked, or I can bring it down. Now, one of the things about Israeli military doctrine, and for that matter, their security forces, is that they wanted it only single action. And the reason why is because they don't keep one in the chamber. And that's part of it. When you draw your firearm, you go ahead and rack the slide and enter a round. And so that's just the way they've done. It's called Israeli condition. But because of that, they didn't need double action. But to be honest with you, single action is excellent for the Browning High Power in the 1911, so we're good to go. But you can carry it cocked and locked. So it's not a decocker, even though they have models, and I believe it's the 941R that is a double single action with a decocker. One thing that I do like, though, about the slide release is that it's like a little paddle. And so I can bring this back, and then if I need to, I can just hit it and drop it. It's got a little ledge right there. Of course, we do have our frame safety here, and this is not ambidextrous, except that you can switch the mag release, which is right here, over to the other side. Now, there's no accessory rail like on a lot of the modern firearms. This is an IMI, so IMI changed to IWI in 2005. So this is definitely a probably early 2000s, maybe even 1990s version. One thing about Classic, because these are from Classic Firearms, is they say they are in good condition. Now that means that there's going to be some wear, and of course obviously if these are carried there is some. But the chrome or hard chrome finish on here is holding up very well. I mean, you see some scuffs and high points, but overall it's in very good condition, and that's going to really protect the firearm from rusting and things like that. And I believe they do offer a hand select if you want something a little better. Now you've got of course your grips. I love the CZ75 grip angle. It is a little bit more pronounced with the 941 than it is with your standard CZ75, as you can see. It kind of bends around this way. But I love the beaver tail on the back as well. That just kind of allows for you to ride your hand up high, and then you can see it's a low bore axis. I mean, it rides right here in the frame. And so, you know, this is a really excellent gun out at the range. Because of these internal slide rails, it actually helps to keep the slide low in the hand, and it makes it very smooth shooting, and it actually increases accuracy and a lot of other things. But the one thing, the downside is that it does have short serrations right here. So, but they're wide enough to where they're easy to grab. I mean, you can just grab those slide serrations really easy. And again, it's just a smooth firearm. And of course, we can get it cocked and locked, or we can drop the hammer and we go that way. Now, it does have a firing pin block, and we'll look at that when we break it down. So this is drop safe. And you do have a half cock notch that you can put on here, which will be disengaged with the safety off if you pull the trigger. We have straight line serrations on the front, and we have a small little patch of serrations right here on the back where your hand's going to just kind of fit the web of your hand. And you can see right here there's a little bit of wear right here on the beaver tail area. But the hammer has spurs, and it is easy to grab. Of course, the 941, it does have this full shroud on the frame, which kind of brings it out. Much different than the standard CZ75, which you see kind of falls in line more like a Browning high power. But I would really compare this more to the SP01 Tactical, and this is an excellent firearm. The shroud is actually much larger and squared off, and it does have Picatinny rails down here at the bottom. And so this is sort of an upgraded version, commander style hammer. You've got more of a sweep here with your beaver tail, and this one is a decocker. So we bring it down, and again, it's double single action. But I think that these two pistols are actually more comparable as far as size and weight. But a gun that definitely kind of comes in close is the TriStar T100 and the other T-series that TriStar makes. And these are very similar to the 941. It brings out that shroud all the way out, and this is a really smooth shooting little handgun as well. Again, this one also accepts CZ mags, so there's a lot of CZ parts and accessories and things like that, and so it makes it really nice to be able to pick up something that's possibly used and may need some parts, and you're able to do it. But all of these should be in good working order. The sights are kind of high, they're steel, and they're 3-dot. And here at the front, of course, it's dovetailed in, a little bit different than your standard CZ sights. But they're a little bit dark right now. I haven't even tried to clean them up. We have a serrations along the top, anti-glare, and of course with the matte finish, that's also going to help, even though this is chrome. On the trigger guard, we have a little bit of serrations here as well. And here on the grip, we do have IMI right here, which makes this really cool because that is Israeli's military industry originally, and it was owned by the state of Israel. And then again, in 2005, it did convert to IWI, which we know today. Also right here, it does come with a lanyard ring, so this one did have a little lanyard loop on it previously. The mag release pops them out. It definitely ejects the magazines. Guys, I'll tell you, when we took it out to the range, it was just a lot of fun to shoot. And I always love to take CZ75s out to the range. The all steel really weighs it down, and it gives it just a good solid recoil control and just smooth shooting firearm. Here we have Jericho 941F, Israeli Military Industries, or the IMI. Here we've got the Israeli Security Forces Star, serial number, made in Israel. Up until 2005, they used polygonal barrels. They were a little tighter. They should create a little better accuracy. In 2005, they went to the straight lands and grooves. So considering this one is an IMI, this should have the polygonal type rifling. All right, guys, we're going to check the trigger pull action close up, and we have just a little bit of play right here. Then it stops at a wall. Nice crisp break. A little bit of over travel, just a touch. We're going to look at that again. Comes to here. Yep, just a teeny bit of over travel, but very acceptable. Reset right there. Good to go. And with our Lyman trigger gauge from Brownells, we're going to check the trigger pull. 2 pounds, 12.1 ounces. 2 pounds, 14.8 ounces. 3 pounds, 2.2 ounces. Now guys, that is a light trigger pull, but one of the things about it is that this is single action, so when you bring it back, you're going to be right there. It's still a definite enough stop right here to where it doesn't surprise you. You know when you're pulling that trigger. And I'm sure that the trigger pull weight's going to vary from gun to gun because, again, these are police trade-ins. The barrel is 4.5 inches. The total length is about 8 inches, and it's about 5.5 or a little over 5.5 from here to here. This does have a base pad on it, but I think the original had just a standard flat metal base plate. And there are a lot of different conditions that these come in. In fact, this one came in with a guard right here on the front of the trigger guard that was black that you could remove just with a set screw. And I was going to show it, but I'm not really sure where it is. But that is, we think, made to be able to fit into certain holsters. And so just kind of a spacer, and it just kind of comes out a little bit. And I did see on Classic on their video that some were coming with that and some weren't. But I think that this really gives this handgun a lot of character. And again, with the star and with the history behind it and just it being single action, makes this a very unique firearm. When these were first released, they did include a 41 Action Express barrel, which the 41 Action Express is really similar to the 40 Smith & Wesson. Maybe a little hotter in design, but most of the time when you look for reloading data, it's about the same as the 40 Smith & Wesson. And of course, 40 Smith & Wesson was such a big popular hit when it did come out that the 41 Action Express just kind of went away, but you can still get it. But this one, of course, only came with the 9mm barrel. And the weight on the 941F, 2 pounds, 7.9 ounces. It is definitely hefty. And the CZ SP01, also 2 pounds, 7.8 ounces. Big thank you to Fiocchi USA for sponsoring the ammo, all made right here in the USA. And of course, as usual, guys, Lula Loaders, we really appreciate them providing these loaders, making range day that much better. Now, of course, we've looked at the internal slide rails, which really give it a low bore axis. I mean, it just really rides low on the frame, and it helps with accuracy and seems to help with muzzle flip as well. So one of the things about the CZ75 design that I've always loved is it's just a smooth shooting handgun. And the Jericho 941 is that plus some, because it's all steel frame. You know, it has the full shroud coming out, or the cover, all the way on the frame. So it's really light to shoot at the range. Now this was built for the 41 Action Express, which is really more like a 40 caliber. So it's really an overkill for 9mm, but that really makes it nice at the range. It is, of course, full all steel, so you're getting that full hefty feel to it. And again, it just really makes it a super smooth shooting handgun. We didn't have any issues with the functioning of the pistol. We did have a little bit of an issue with one of the magazines, and it was the original supplied. It just seemed to not want to, it wanted to fall out a little bit. And I'm sure the magazine was just somewhat wore out. But the great thing again, guys, is that you can get CZ75 magazines very reasonably. Headshot! All right. Wow.
Time to
I know, it's sweet, isn't it? Now, disassembly of the 941F. I'm going to go ahead and check to make sure the gun is unloaded. Right here you have two little notches. You want to line those up and make them even, just like this. Then back here, I'm going to take my magazine, the butt of my magazine, and just push it out. Sometimes you can do it with your hand, but this one's a little tight. And then we just pull out our slide stop. And then we can remove the slide right from the frame. Now you have your slide rails on the inside, which again is very different. And then we have the internal rails into the frame. And so that guides all the way across both sides. And again, guys, it just gives it a very smooth shooting experience. And you'll notice that there's still the bluing on the inside. So these were chrome plated just on the outside and the blue is left interior. Here we have our recoil spring guide rod. It is all steel. And we have our barrel, and it is the CZ barrel design with the link. Here you can see the lugs, and there is your firing pin block. So again, this is drop safe. Even though this is dirty, you can see how nice and finely finished that this handgun is. And guys, that's all you need to do to field strip. We're just going to return our barrel, recoil spring, and guide rod. Bring in our slide on our frame. Get those two notches lined up and bring in our slide stop. And there we go. Double check for function. Good to go. Now, one of the things about police trade-ins or even military surplus is that they bring them into the country in pretty large lots, and then once the supply dries up, the price goes up. Price comes in fairly reasonable, but it always goes up. I've seen it for the past 40 years. And it's no different than this Jericho 941F. It is an Israeli security force trade-in. And so that gives it a lot of character, just knowing that this was used for security, which gives it a little soul to it, in my opinion. I really like that. Of course, with the star on here, that kind of identifies it. And then again, with just the single action. Of course, there's different conditions. Many of these have been carried a lot, shot little. But there's definitely some surface wear and things just from everyday use. And again, that's the reason the price is considerably less. These run $349 on the Classic Firearms website. And if you buy these new from IWI at this time, I believe they're running about $549. Now the $549, that also is a double single action, whereas these are just single action because of the Israeli military doctrine. And then of course with the CZ design, with that low bore axis, with the slide fitting down into the frame, it just really makes it a smooth shooting handgun. And so if you're looking for one of those CZ designs, or you just like collecting these reasonably priced police and surplus trade-ins, I think that this is a great candidate for that. And I really appreciate the guys over at Classic Firearms for sending this for the test and evaluation. You know, it's really nice to have those guys to be able to send things that I could not necessarily get anywhere else. When it comes to an Israeli police trade-in, let's face it, these guys know what they're doing. Guys, every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we have a Facebook Live event. Robbie Wheaton and I get together, talk about different upcoming reviews, different ideas about guns and gear, and also things that are impacting the Second Amendment. Check us out at Such Fun Gun Reviews Facebook page. I'll have the link down below in the description. Again, every Tuesday, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And guys, we have a lot of fun. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. And IMI train. Okay.
Like Christmas music. It's the holidays.
Cut. Mag loader. Let's get on it. Okay, I'll get in touch with him. All right, thank you. Conditions, okay. There's conditions and conditions and more conditions.